right, flip open Story of the World to chapter 19. It is on page 181. The English in India. The Indian Empire falls apart. The Ottoman Empire wasn't the only Eastern empire losing its lands. Southeast of the Ottomans, the Empire of India was also shrinking away. We've already read about the three great Mughal emperors of India: Jahangir, World Caesar; Shah Jahan, King of the World; and Aurangzeb, Conqueror of the World. These three emperors made India into a huge and wealthy nation. But the last of these emperors, Aurangzeb, made three fatal decisions. He decided to make Islam the law of India and to destroy the temples of Hindu worshippers. He decided to spend his whole reign fighting to conquer the Deccan, the southern lands of India, while ignoring the northern part of his kingdom and his capital city, Delhi. And he gave the English permission to build a trading post in the Indian province of Bengal on India's eastern coast. Aurangzeb didn't know that the English trading post in Bengal would help bring an end to the Empire of India. But when he died, at the age of 89, he could already see that India was torn apart by Muslim hatred of Hindus and by the bloodshed caused by years of war. He was sick, weary, and filled with grief. "I have not done well," he wrote, just before his death, "by the country or its people." Aurangzeb was right. India was soaked in misery, and as soon as Aurangzeb died, the misery got worse. The moment the emperor drew his last breath, three of his sons all claimed the throne. Aurangzeb's oldest son had been waiting to inherit the crown for 64 years. He wasn't about to give way to his brothers. Instead, he killed them in battle, crowned himself Emperor Bahadur Shah I, and moved into the royal palace at Delhi. For a little while, Bahadur tried to mend India's woes. Aurangzeb had destroyed Hindu worship places. Bahadur allowed Hindus to worship as they pleased. Aurangzeb had spent years fighting against the tribes who lived in the south of India. Bahadur tried to make peace with them, but Bahadur died only 5 years after becoming emperor. His son claimed the throne of India and spent the next 11 months paying more attention to his favorite dancing girl than to his duties as emperor. The new emperor made all of his dancing girls' friends, including poor musicians and an old vegetable seller, into state officials. He spent hours cutting down trees for fun, sinking boats on the canals nearby just to watch the passengers struggle to shore, and sitting on top of his fort throwing rocks at people who passed by. That sounds bad. Finally, two Indian noblemen, brothers named Hussein Ali and Hassan Ali, had had enough. The Ali brothers hired assassins to break into the emperor's bedroom and strangle him. They picked another young man who had Mughal blood in him and decided to make him emperor instead. They rushed the new emperor into Delhi and arranged to have him crowned after an elaborate coronation parade. The Ali brothers planned to be the real rulers of India. Their new emperor, Farrukhsiyar, was supposed to do only what the Ali brothers ordered him to do. We're going to call him Farrukh. But Farrukh turned out to be cowardly and suspicious. He was afraid of everyone, even his own servants and the children who played on the palace grounds. He accused the Ali brothers of planning his death and threatened to have them executed. So Hussein and Hassan sent their assassins to the palace once more to get rid of this useless king. When he saw the assassins coming, Farrukh hid beneath his mother's skirt. The assassins found him anyway. They dragged him out and put him to death, but nobody cared. He was feeble, false, cowardly, contemptible, one writer who lived at the time explained. It is impossible to regret him. That's really sad. Poor Farrukh. The Ali brothers put another Mughal king on the throne, but he died of a seizure after ruling for only 4 months. They put a third king on the throne, This one died in even less time. Finally, Hussein and Hassan crowned a 17-year-old Mughal boy, Muhammad Shah, as Emperor of India. Muhammad was healthy and energetic. As a matter of fact, he was so energetic that he convinced a few other ambitious Indian noblemen to get rid of the Ali brothers. For the next 30 years, Muhammad Shah would rule all alone over India. But Muhammad Shah didn't actually bother to run his empire. He spent most of his time going to animal fights and watching bears and wild boars gore and slash at each other. He even paid to have wild animals brought to Delhi to amuse him. In one fight, he ordered bears, goats, rams, and a wild boar dressed up in tiger skins so that they could then fight to the death against a wild elephant. It's really cruel. Meanwhile, all of the officials in India were busy dividing up the land that they had once governed for the emperor and ruling it themselves. India, once an empire under a single Mughal emperor, had become a handful of little independent provinces ruled by petty kings, each pretending to pay allegiance to an emperor who never bothered to visit them or give them any orders. Just 30 years after Aurangzeb's death, the Persians invaded this weak and divided India. We read about the patchwork of the Persian Empire not too many chapters ago. Remember, Persia lay between the Ottoman Empire and the Empire of India. During the years that the Ali brothers were putting one emperor after another on the throne of India, Persia was governed by a Shah named Nadir. Nadir Shah had been a highway robber from the part of Persia that we now call Afghanistan. But after he helped fight against the Ottoman Turks, Nadir grew popular enough to claim the throne of Persia for himself. He was anxious for the countries around him to recognize his power as Shah, so he sent messengers to Delhi, hoping that the Indian emperor would hail him as Persia's rightful ruler. But the Indian court was so disorganized that no one ever sent a message back. Nadir Shah was furious. "How dare the court of India ignore and insult me?" he thought to himself. "How dare they treat me like a bandit king? I'll teach them a lesson they won't soon forget." He marched his army down through the north of India toward Delhi, conquering Indian cities as he went. The frightened Indian army finally stumbled out of Delhi to meet him, but they were so terrified of Nadir Shah's giant war camels and guns that they couldn't even get into line to meet his attack. 20,000 Indian soldiers fell on the battlefield. Nadir Shah captured Muhammad Shah and forced him to follow the Persian victory parade back into Delhi, bowing and saluting the whole way. Once in Delhi, Nadir Shah ordered the city burned and the people put to the sword. The streets were strewn with corpses like dead leaves, one eyewitness wrote. Later, the city was reduced to ashes and looked like a burnt plain. Nadir Shah then took the key to India's treasury, plundered the Taj Mahal, and marched back to Persia loaded down with silver, gold, jewels, and elephants. He even took the famous peacock throne of India back to Persia and broke it up for its jewels. The accumulated wealth of 348 years changed masters in a moment, mourned one Indian who watched. The Indian Empire was gone. Muhammad Shah remained on the throne, but he reigned over a ghostly city filled with charred walls, deserted houses, and open graves. The shopkeepers' invasion. When India fell apart around them, the English decided that it was time to take charge. Just 5 years after the Jamestown colonists arrived in North America, English merchants had built the first English trading post in India. In a rickety wooden building in Surat, a rich, busy port city on the western coast of India, English merchants huddled over their accounts, counted bales of cotton, silk, and indigo leaves, and arranged to load these Indian goods onto the English ships anchored in the Gulf nearby. The English made so much money trading for Indian goods that they opened more trading posts in Bombay, a little to the south, and then in the province of Bengal, on the other side of India. To build these ports and pay for ships and sailors, English merchants banded together into a group called the East India Company. Each member of the company helped pay for the buildings and ships of the trading posts and got part of the profit in return. But then Aurangzeb died, and India began to collapse. Local officials called themselves kings and fought against each other. Hindu tribes from the south of India invaded the northern parts of the country. The Persians marched down to Delhi and destroyed it. The English watched from their trading posts and worried. How could the English merchants keep on carrying silk, muslin, and indigo from the center of India to the ports when they were likely to be attacked along the way? And what if Hindu tribes, Muslim rebels, or Persian invaders attacked the tiny wooden English trading posts? The English decided that it was time to become soldiers as well as merchants. They would fight to protect their trading parties and their trading posts. They started to build forts in Bombay and in Bengal. That's when the trouble began. Like other Indian officials, the governor of the province of Bengal now called himself the ruler, or Nawab, of Bengal. Now, the Nawab, whose name was Siraj, saw that the English were building themselves a fortress in Bengal, right in the little English settlement called Calcutta. They had named it Fort William, the name of an English king. They were placing guns along the walls, and they had never even asked permission. Siraj grew more and more suspicious. Why did the English need a fortress in Calcutta? Were they planning on taking over his little kingdom of Bengal? Siraj wasn't sure that his Bengal army could defeat the English, but he had an idea. There were plenty of French traders in India too. He would offer the French land in India if they would join with him to chase the English out of Calcutta. The French were delighted to help get rid of the English. They joined with Siraj and marched to Calcutta. The fort at Calcutta was barely finished, and few English soldiers stood on its walls. Siraj's army captured it in less than 4 days. When Siraj's men poured into the fort, Siraj ordered all of the English captives, 145 men and 1 woman, thrown into Fort William's dungeon. The little dungeon, down in the cellar of the fort, was nicknamed the Black Hole. It was only 24 feet long and 18 feet wide, perhaps twice the size of your bedroom. But Siraj's soldiers forced every last Englishman through the door and bolted it. There was no food or water. The Indian night was hot and still. There was no room in the black hole to sit or to breathe. One of the captives who spent the night in this dungeon, John Hallwell, claimed that by morning, 120 of the prisoners had died from suffocation. When he was released and returned to England, he wrote an account of that night. Figure to yourself the situation of 146 wretches crammed together in a close, sultry night in Bengal, he exclaimed. What word shall I adopt to tell you the whole that my soul suffered? Hallwell's account described men dying from thirst and heat while standing straight up, wedged together. Later, some historians would suggest that Hallwell was exaggerating, and that so many people could never have fit into such a small space. But it didn't really matter. English men and women heard the story of the Black Hole of Calcutta. They were furious. How could Englishmen ignore such savagery? The East India Company decided to do something unheard of, send an army into India and punish Siraj and the Indians of Bengal. This was an astounding decision. After all, the East India Company wasn't a country or a king. It was a company. Imagine a big company like Microsoft or Walmart hiring its own army and invading a city because its employees have been treated badly. That's what the East India Company did. Its members hired an army and a general to lead it. This general, Sir Robert Clive, marched his army over to India, ready to meet Siraj's soldiers. But he didn't leave the victory to chance. Ahead of time, Sir Robert Clive sent a secret message to Siraj's chief general, Mir Jafar. The message said, "When you see the English army advancing, make some excuse to hold most of your army back from the battle. If you do this, I will make you the ruler of Bengal, once Siraj is dead." Mir Jafar listened to the message and made no promises. But when the Indian army met the East India Company men in battle, Mir Jafar leaned on his spear at the battle's edge. He issued no orders. His soldiers, waiting for his command, kept retreating. Soon they broke their formation and fled in panic. Siraj himself was killed. Can we pause? Part 2